Okay, if you're a car guy like me, at night you're searching through Marketplace looking for that perfect project car, you finally found it, it just needs an engine. And you're like, oh, it can't cost that much to build a performance engine nowadays, especially with all the parts that are out there on eBay. So you go to eBay, you find you a cheap set of heads, they look perfect, you click the buy it now button, and then you have that immediate twinge of regret.
That's my credo, no regrets.
Mm-hmm. How about that?
Not one?
Nope.
Well, on this episode of Dissrepair, we actually clicked on the buy it now button and got a set of those heads. And I'll show you what it took to put them on a car and whether it was worth the risk or not. We'll find out if we were actually winners or losers. You be the judge.
So we got the cylinder head off. These are the E7s that are on the stock 5.0. This wagon had a 89 5.0. I did a ton of research on what I was going to get, but I noticed that they had these Chinese heads and the pricing was very affordable. These right here normally are around $900. They were on sale for $600. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to hit the buy it now key and I'm going to try this. Let's compare them. That way we can do a back-to-back. So the only things I'm changing on this is I am changing to a GT40 tubular intake because I had one, and then I'm going to do these heads. So this car is probably the perfect experiment for these. So they come in some nice looking boxes. So let's see what we got here. Well, they actually look pretty. They do look very nice. Man, I can tell the difference in the weight instantly. So let's lay them next to each other. One thing I do notice right off the bat is these I'm going to have to go to guide plates and hardened push rods and roller rockers. These were pedestal style initially, so I won't be able to reuse these, but I'll have to change to guide plates. So the other thing I heard is check the valve spring, so I'm going to do that for sure. So let's look at, now I've heard that the exhaust ports on an E7 are very restrictive. So as far as putting my finger in here, there's not a lot of room. There's a thermactor bump that's right in the way. I can see the back of the valve, but the ports are very, very small on the exhaust port. So let's look at this head. So instantly I can see the back of the exhaust valve. Very, very large. The port seems fairly high like the stock. I think these are stock location. I don't know any different. So that looks good. Also, the important thing to check too when you're buying an aftermarket head, spark plug angle. Like they're the same angle. Now I'll need to make sure they're the same type of plug when I get to that point. The next thing I'm going to check, let's look at the combustion chamber. So these have more of a, like a heart shape pattern in comparison to this. So advertised, these are 62 cc's, and on the internet it says that the E7 heads are 58 cc's. So I will lose a little bit of compression. I'm going to try to compensate for that. I bought a thin Felpro head gasket to help drop the cc's down, so I should get back in the same, that's something I shouldn't even notice. So now, as far as I'm looking at the surfaces, everything looks pretty good on these. So let's compare intake ports. Well, there's definitely a major size difference in the intake ports. Now this one, I can see where it travels around the head bolts. It's definitely even a different shape. So I can see why the CCs are dramatically larger with these heads. You see any other differences, Dan?
Yeah, let's talk about valve size here. Is another.
Oh, absolutely. So I immediately see the intake valve is much, much larger. Exhaust valve as well. They almost touch in comparison to the Ford valve size. So there are definitely some things that should definitely increase flow. So I'm excited about that. They're such an economical price, but I did notice one difference between, let's say, an AFR and these heads are, these heads don't include guide plates or studs. So I had to go and order some guide plates, and I had to order some studs for it as well. Well, another thing about these heads too is they use a 1/2 inch head bolt size, so that'd work on for a 351 Windsor. But since I'm going to reuse the 302 head bolts because I'm trying to do this economically, I had to buy some spacers. So none of these components were super expensive, but this stuff all adds up to be another couple $100. So and now that I can't reuse my rocker arms, I had to invest in roller rockers. So once again, I bought some Speedmaster, which these heads are, they're Speedmaster boxes, but they're actually marked PC, which is Procomp. So I'm assuming that's the same company, different names. I chose to do a roller tip only. With the ball, I feel like the less rollers that you have involved in this without a heavy spring or a high lift cam, the more reliable. So there are multiple things. It's not just a unbolt the head and change the head. So be aware that there's going to be some things that you're going to have to add because it's not just a swap only. As far as the negative comments are water leaks or maybe weak valve springs or valve seat issues. So one thing, the 1-year warranty, and they also are all pressure checked. So that should make it where I feel more comfortable bolting these heads on my motor, knowing that they have been pressure checked. So the valve springs, I hear that this is something that you definitely need to check. Now the heads that I bought, these ones that were the sale price, it did not say for roller cam valve springs. There's a head that's a little more money, a few $100s more, and it says right in the ad, springs for roller lifters. So I figured that I better go ahead and make sure I'm safe because that's where you'll run into problems with the valve springs. So I bought some high quality valve springs. I basically picked a valve spring that'll work with, say, a B303 cam because that's what I'm intending when I do decide to do a cam. I just want to have a little improvement. So I did some research online and bought the valve spring. So once again, there's another thing that I'll have to invest some money. All right, so one thing I noticed on the internet is complaints about the valve job being poor and the valves leaking. So what guys are doing is they're spraying brake cleaner. So I'm going to fill this port up with brake cleaner and we're going to do a look to see if there's any leakage. So far that one looks great. So now I'm going to try the exhaust side. Okay, we're full of solvent. Looks like that's holding too. So I'm going to trust their valve job. All right, so the next thing that I've noticed is I decided to check the head gasket in relation to the chamber. So here's the head gasket compared to the E7. So you can see the fire ring does not extend into the cylinder in any of them. There's still a little room, so when you compress the gasket, the fire ring squeezes in. You want to keep the fire ring away from the spark and heat so that you don't melt the head gasket. So when we move it over to the Chinese head, you'll see that I can feel that the fire ring is actually slightly into the combustion chamber right here. So that actually is, that makes me a little concerned because how much clamping pressure do we get on the fire ring? And also, is that going to heat up and eat a head gasket? I don't see a way to fix this because everything's lined up with the dowel, and so I'm going to have to try it. So I'm starting to notice what the difference is between the high dollar heads and some of these heads. I initially took these Chinese cylinder heads out of the box. We did a few things checking them, and I decided that I had a set of AFRs ordered for another project. I decided, hey, I'm going to wait, and I want to compare the two heads together before I do my installation on my car. So one thing I noticed, once the AFR heads, these are AFR 165s. These are made for the pedestal type rocker arm, which I wanted to go with since it's OEM equipment. Should have a good lifespan on that. It's not a high lift cam. But you'll notice immediately that the exhaust ports are larger on the Chinese head. So these are CNC ported through the AFRs, real nice looking shape. And these look like they have a nice shape too. What I had noticed when I had test fit my gasket onto the Chinese head, I noticed that when you line the dowel pins up, that there was some of the chamber was cast a little large and part of the fire ring was actually hanging into the combustion chamber. Well, that was one of my concerns. I was, when you compare that to the AFR head, you'll notice that lining up the dowels, that the gasket is inside of the combustion chambers on each one of these. They are to the max to unshroud the valves. The other thing, when you'll look here, the intake ports, when you compare the two, you'll see that the intake ports on the Chinese head are much larger. So I would say this is cast to be maybe a 175 to 185 head. And then once again, I picked the 165s because I'm looking for all low end torque. What concerned me is when you place the intake gasket on here, you'll notice that you line it up where the gaskets line up on the head gaskets, that there's a big hangover on the port. I wasn't so concerned about the hangover, but there's not a lot of contact. You'll notice I have to fit the port, the top of the port, I have to move it up nearly a 1/4 inch. So that concerned me. The fuel injected intake actually has a little cutout right at the top of the port for the injector, and that concerned me that I wouldn't have much gasket coverage. So that was a concern. Once again, we register it on the head gasket. You'll see that the port is almost perfect with this gasket. Now I'm sure there's other gaskets available, and that's what when we use this on another project, we'll probably experiment with some different gaskets and double check.
I know we started on a 57 Ford wagon, but we ended up putting the AFR heads on that because of the complications with some of the things we had to fix on these heads. So we ended up putting them on this Falcon, which is your car. Tell us a little about the build. You built the engine here. It's a small one.
So this engine is a stock bottom end with those Chinese heads, and it has an F303 Plus cam from Summit.
So tell me about what it took to put these heads on.
Yes, so I got this head because of some of the issues that were deal breakers for the wagon. And so I messed with them more, which entailed decking the heads for more clearance. So to fix that head gasket sealing issue, just made the chambers smaller. So it has a little higher compression. And then the other thing that I bought for it was valve springs. So I was upgrading the cam at the same time, and so I also did valve springs to match the cam.
So how does this engine run compared to what it did before with the other stock heads?
They're definitely a pretty big step up from stock heads. You can tell it has a lot more airflow, doesn't run out of steam at the same RPM level, like it revs out farther.
This thing's got a pretty, if you know anything about the Alphabet cams, the F cam's a pretty hot cam. It also has a really, really radical idle. I don't know, they're made for more of a high RPM, which these small blocks love to rev. So I'm pretty excited about hearing this thing for the first time. I've heard it on video, but I have not heard it in real life. So let's start it up.
All right. It's 228, 232 at 114 and 550 lift. So the limiter is set at 6,700. Wow, it revs a long ways. That is way different than us. Yeah, it's faster. Oh, and now it'll run good because the alternator light shut off. Oh, is that the... So... Oh, no.
What? Came back on again?
That makes fun. Wow. That is so much different. Yeah, it runs good.
Yeah, that is so much different. That is like night and day. just going to wrap up, like, what did this really cost to put these heads on this thing? So, a couple things we had to buy. Number one, you had to buy the heads, like $600.
Yep.
I know they didn't come with guide plates. I think those were like $100.
$100.
And then valve springs.
The valve springs were $120.
Okay. So we were at what? 6, 7, 820. Then what else did you have to buy? Roller rockers.
Roller rockers.
And they were what? $200.
$200.
So you're at $1,000.
$1,000.
$1,000. And then the milling.
Milling cost $173.
So we're at almost $1,200.
About $1,200.
$1,200 on that cheap set of eBay heads. So that just kind of goes to show you a cheap set of heads probably ain't the cheapest. I guess all in all, would you do it again?
Yeah, I didn't expect this to be real cheap or real easy, and I think that's kind of the pitfall that you get into with stuff on the internet like that, is you think you buy one thing and you're done, but with cars it's always something, so you gotta go through and make sure you get it all right if you want it to work how you want it to.
So basically that's I guess the wrap up is yes, they'll work. Is it going to be like the cheapest way out? Yeah, it's marginal on whether it was cheap. Did it actually work and make the car faster?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 100%. This car's like night and day different than what it was before.
Much faster.
Yeah, so I think we're happy with the power level. I guess after you kind of forget about what you paid for things, it works, right?
Yep.
So that's it for Dissrepair.
All right.
Mm-hmm.